On today's episode, From Dark to Light, we meet an incredible guest whose life story reflects extraordinary courage, resilience, and the decision to keep moving forward no matter what. In 2013, Kristan Seaford's world was forever changed when a case of strep throat rapidly escalated into sepsis. To save her life, doctors amputated 3.5 of her limbs. At the time, she was a stay-at-home mom to 5 children and a part-time fitness instructor. Through it all, Kristan leaned on her deep faith and the unwavering support of her family to not only survive, but to rebuild a life filled with meaning and purpose. Today, she's a licensed mental health counselor with her own thriving practice, a sought-after speaker, and a passionate advocate for others facing hardship. She uses her voice and her story to bring light, hope, and healing to people walking through their own battles. I cannot wait for you to hear her story, so let's get to it. Hi, Kristan. It is a complete honor to have you here with From Dark to Light, and I am honored that you are willing to share your story with us, so thank you for being here.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here as well.
Well, thank you. So I have to share that you and I don't know each other that well or really that much, but what I do know of you is when we lived back in a suburb of Charlotte several years ago, I remember taking your fitness classes at the Y, and you're just like this fiery, petite, just powerhouse where at the end of the class, you have no energy left because you just like beat us, you know? And then we lived in neighboring neighborhoods, and you would be running through the neighborhood pregnant and just a ball in the front and pushing a jogging stroller with not one kid, not 2 kids, but 3 little kids in the stroller.
That was the only way I got out of the house. So,
I know, but boy, I mean, if that doesn't say a lot to the listeners, I don't know what will. I mean, that's just incredible. So your story is one of resilience and just sheer determination. And I would love for you to share it with us. But can you just take us back to what life was like in 2013 for you and your family?
Sure. Well, I had 5 little ones. My youngest was 10. And then I had a 7-year-old, twins that were 5, and then a 12, 13-month-old baby. And, life was really fun, really chaotic, but I tend to thrive in chaos. So I was people say this all the time, but I was living my best life.
Really?
Really and truly. And I worked part-time at the Y, but for the most part, I was a stay-at-home mom. And I worked at the Y. My husband called it my country club. It truly was my country club. And I felt like I knew everybody and everybody knew me. I just felt just at home and in my element,
Yeah. Yeah. So what were you like back then? Would you say, if you were to describe yourself, were you just strong-willed? Did you stay up till midnight making sure the kids' lunches were ready? Like, were you fiercely independent? What was life like? I mean, with 5 kids, were you doing it all or a lot of it?
I was doing it all. I wasn't doing any of it really, really well. I mean, put it this way, I was not packing a charcuterie board for my kids to bring to the lunchroom. It was, some days it was an Uncrustable, and that's what it was. But I was very, very social. And since babysitters were super expensive, I entertained a lot. And so I had friends over all the time. I was the one that, I had the neighborhood Christmas party where we would decorate cookies and then go out caroling. I also had the neighborhood, July 4th parade. I mean, I was talking about this with a friend the other day. I think I had every holiday but Halloween because she did that one. But I mean, that is truly what I loved to do.
Yeah.
And I just I was doing all the things that I loved.
Yeah, it's so wonderful. So then, can you take us back to November 2013? You are preparing for Thanksgiving, and tell us what happens.
Yeah, so I was preparing for Thanksgiving. Yes, I was supposed to have my entire extended family for dinner, which I think the count was going to be like 35 people. And so I was furiously trying to clean my house because, well, my story now is that I kept a beautifully clean house back then. But it's really since all this happened that my house became a mess. My house has always been a mess. I'm not, that's, I used to tell my husband that when he got home at night, like if the house was clean, that means that nobody had any fun and nobody learned anything. He
Ah,
would
love it.
often get home and he'd say, "Wow, y'all learned a lot today." But yeah, but so I was firstly cleaning and all the things, and my kids were like petri dishes. They were bringing home every kind of germ known to man. I think
Yeah.
that week we had a stomach bug. Someone else had strep, and then all just the run of the mill boogers that little ones bring in. And on Saturday evening, I started to feel pretty sick, and I should have seen it coming, but I'd had a flu shot. I also was in decent shape. I thought, no worries, I'll just push through.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that perhaps I just tried to push through until I couldn't push anymore, because that night, Saturday night, was long and awful. It was one of those things where your fever is so bad that you are freezing one minute, but then sweating the next, but then you're freezing again. And, just my fever was really bad, and I was coughing a lot. My throat hurt, something fierce. And so that next morning, I rolled over to text my best friend and running mate that I wasn't going to be able to do our normal Sunday run. And don't tell my husband because he's a pastor, but my Sunday run was the most sacred thing that I had.
Yeah.
And it was, come hell or high water, I would say to my husband, you could travel all you want, go out with the boys, you just be home at 6 o'clock on Sunday morning. And that's all
Wow.
I need. Because that's when, my friend and I, we used to talk about how the whole way out, we would like bitch and moan about our families and our husbands and how we never wanted to go home again. And then the way back, we would, love our husbands again and be ready to go back to chaos land. But I just noticed I was getting all excited just thinking about those runs. But so when I rolled over to tell my friend that I wasn't going to run that day, to text her, my husband knew something was up right away because I didn't miss a run.
Yeah.
And so he knew something was up, and I think my best friend did as well. But to show how crazy I was, I even had texted her, well, check back in this afternoon. Maybe I'll feel better. And let's just say I didn't feel better that afternoon. I asked my husband if he could just take the kids to church that morning so that I could stay home and rest. And he looked at me with eyes like flying saucers because I don't think he had ever taken all 5 kids anywhere. And I just kept telling him, there's babysitting once you get there. Just get to the church. But then when they came home, they found me. In fact, my oldest 2 were the ones that found me. I was laying on the ground unconscious and barely breathing and coughing a lot. I had basically become septic. And when they got home, of course, I wasn't really breathing, and they called 911. Actually, I don't even like to imagine what it was like that morning or that afternoon, but it had to have been more chaotic than usual, right? They got me to the hospital that was in our little suburb, and they thought that I would be fine. And apparently I came to a little bit that day, long enough for them to give me a flu test, which was positive, and a strep test, which was also positive. But then they also gave me a chest x-ray, and they did a bunch of blood work. The chest x-ray came back, and I was already deep into double pneumonia, and it showed that the infection had indeed gotten into my blood, which is called sepsis. And once you have sepsis, that infection runs wild and attacks your organs one by one. And so that afternoon, when my kids came home and found me, my organs were in the beginning process of shutting down.
Wow.
Right? It's one of those things that isn't supposed to happen in 2013 or whatever it was, but it did. And that afternoon, we were at that smaller hospital, and the doctors and nurses, their heads started to fall, and they started to apologize to the family and say that they wished there was more they could do, that they had really pulled out all the stops. They also said that the hospital in Uptown Charlotte could have handled a case like mine better, that they had the training, they were a higher level trauma center, and they had the equipment and all of that. And of course, the next question that my family asked was, well, why aren't we on our way up there?
Yeah.
And the doctor said, well, I just don't think it would be worth the effort. I don't think she would make it up there. I don't think she would survive the transport.
Wow. That gives me goosebumps.
Right?
Wow.
The doctor left that evening and had gone home. But something made him turn around and go back and say, let's do this. Let's give it a shot.
Wow.
I think my mom's the one that convinced him. But at any rate, so they went back, they loaded me up in the ambulance, and, there were no guarantees, but every time I see an ambulance racing around with the sirens on now, I stop and say a little prayer, for them and for their families and everything, because my ambulance that day must have been racing all the way up Monroe Road here in Charlotte to get to the hospital. And so this is a long story. I'm sorry. I keep going on.
No.
Once they got me to the hospital, there was great celebration because my family was like, oh, okay, she's here now. She'll be fine. Only it wasn't that easy, It was still a long road. They put me in this type of contraption called a rotoprone bed. And in that bed, they kind of suspend you in the air where your head is lower than your feet. And then they turn you in 360 degrees. Apparently, it looks like something from medieval times. I have the pleasure of remembering. But, they turned my body very, very slowly and very consistently. The idea was to drain the pneumonia from my lungs.
Wow.
They also gave me every powerful antibiotic they could, as well as a medication called a vasopressor. And that was meant to raise my blood pressure, which I guess was down at a dangerously low level. And it is that medication that saved my life. The only problem is that that exact medication also stole the nutrients and the oxygen from my limbs so that it could come to the middle of my body and save my organs. So that same medicine that saved my life also killed my hands and feet.
Mm.
So, go ahead.
Can I ask you something?
Yes.
Okay, so as an outsider, I remember there was a caring bridge set up for you. The community really rallied around your family. There was like the meal trains and all this kind of stuff. And I think we had moved away at that point, but I was still on that caring bridge. So we were getting these daily updates, right? It's kind of weird that this is happening because you didn't know this, but I remember so much support and prayers for you and your family. But you were unconscious throughout all of this. When did you finally
Right.
wake up, and what was the realization when you woke up?
Yeah. So I think that I woke up very slowly, and even after I was awake, I wasn't really with it yet. I think they
Mm-hmm.
had to explain to me what happened many times. But so it was the Sunday before Thanksgiving when I got sick. And then the first time that I remember being lucid was Christmas morning.
Wow.
And so there's even a picture of my family from that day. And I'm sure people were like, why are you taking pictures on a day like today? But I guess it was the happiest day
Mm.
that my family had had in quite some time.
Yeah.
That morning, I guess they were able to plug up my trach. By that time, they had given me a tracheotomy, among a lot of other things, but so that I could speak.
Mm.
And my husband says he cried the first time he heard my voice again.
Oh,
But
I bet.
yeah, like when I woke up, they weren't even really sure what would be left of me because they weren't sure how long I had been unconscious and how long my pulse had stopped for.
Mm.
So they didn't know what I would know or how long it might take me to get memories back.
Yeah.
But apparently I knew just where I was, and apparently I started yelling at my husband, like even before they took the trach out. They could tell I was yelling at him to like get home to our kids. Like, what is he doing sitting next to me? Like, who's taking care of the kids?
Oh my goodness, of course. So
Right?
when you woke up and at that point you still had your limbs, right?
I did.
And what did you
However,
see?
yes. So my hands and feet were something out of a nightmare, and they were black, and my fingers were wrinkled. They were dead. They looked like a witch's hands,
Wow.
and so they kept them bandaged. It looked like I was a pro boxer,
Mm.
but and at the time, I think that I thought they were bandages because they needed to, because they were like bloody and stuff. But
Hmm.
then in time, I realized that they were covering them up so that my kids wouldn't see them.
Oh,
Thank God for that. I
yeah.
spent some time in trauma therapy trying to forget what those looked like.
Yeah.
And they weren't pretty. And they were really painful.
Mm.
And
I can imagine.
it was never one of those things that the doctors said, okay, well, she could live, but she's going to have to lose her hands and feet. It was, nobody ever thought that far into it. They just wanted me to live.
Mm.
And it's funny because I remember very well one day on a long run that I was talking to my friends about, I think we had just finished our will or something and done a healthcare power of attorney, and a bunch of us were talking about it. And I was like, listen, like, if I have to ever lose a leg, like, if I can't run again, just go ahead and shoot me between the eyes. But I guess we don't know what we can handle until we have to, right?
Wow.
It was quite obvious when I saw the hands and feet that they would need to be amputated.
Yes.
And right away, they started planning this one big surgery. They got the best hand surgeon in town and the best foot surgeon in town, and they planned this one big marathon surgery. I guess they did it in tandem so that I wouldn't have to be under any longer or again, right? But so it was one big surgery. I mean, my surgery wasn't until January 30th. So they had sent me to like a nursing home, for lack of a better word, because insurance stopped paying for a hospital at that point.
Wow.
But so I, was at this nursing home, and by the time the surgery date came, I was ready. Like
I can imagine the pain of that. Just had to have been excruciating. But how did you prepare I mean, I don't think anyone can prepare you mentally for something like that, right? How did they have any support for you? I mean, how do you prepare for something like that? Or were you more concerned about preparing your kids for it, as a mom? Like where were you mentally with all of that?
It's an interesting question how I prepared my kids. I don't think I was the one to tell them. I think that my husband and my sister had the idea to play them the movie Soul Surfer.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember that? It had just come out about that time, about the girl who has her arm taken off by a shark. She goes back to surfing, and it's just a very triumphant movie in the end.
Right.
It's interesting. Another movie that was popular around then was Dolphin Tale.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, they made a prosthetic tail for the dolphin.
Right.
And I don't know what made me just think of this, but the guy that made the prosthetic tail for the dolphin also made my first leg. And so
really?
I was like so excited. I had like the storybook signed for the kids.
Winter.
Yes, exactly.
Winter.
Yes. So that was kind of cool too. But so those were the touch points, I think, at the time, right?
Yeah.
But but back to how did I prepare? Honestly, I don't know that I did. I just was so ready to get out of that nursing home because it was not a pleasant place. It was brand spanking new. And so it looked gorgeous, which is, I'm sure, why my family said, oh, yeah, she can go there, no problem. But they didn't have any nursing staff. And so, I would be walking down the halls to try to find someone to give me some pain medicine. And I would like buzz, and nobody would answer, or else they'd answer and they'd say, oh, yeah, we'll send somebody. And nobody would ever come. I really wanted to get out of there. So maybe that was a blessing in disguise because it got me to the day. And otherwise I might not have gotten up on that operating table. I don't know.
Wow.
But yeah, I don't necessarily, I guess whatever I did to prepare, it wasn't enough. I don't think anything would have been, honestly.
So can you take us to that time when they unwrapped you, they did the surgery, and you discover everything that they had removed. How was your mental and physical? How were you able to be like, okay, I'm going to move on from here. It is what it is. That like, and maybe that took years to get to. I don't know. But what was that initial
You know,
view like?
I think that, people always say put one foot in front of the other, right? If only I had feet. No. I have a very sick, dark sense of humor, and so sorry about that.
Maybe that's helped you. Maybe the humor has helped
It
you.
100% helps me. 100%.
Yeah.
My husband says I've also gotten a lot funnier with time because I have a lot more jokes, right? But but back to the thing, I think that after I had the amputations, it took them some time to get my pain under control. It took them some time to get, I think, my blood flowing well into my legs again.
Mm.
So I was in like the hospital for, I don't know, 10 days. And then from there, they sent me to a rehab hospital. And once I got to the rehab hospital, like somehow I saw the gym and I was like, I can do this. I know how to work out.
Wow.
And so I just like hit it hard. And they were, the physical therapists and the occupational therapists, like they didn't come on the weekends. And so I would be like, where are these people? Seriously? So I would ask for extra things to do over the weekend while they were gone. Because
wow.
I wanted to get home so badly. And I knew that the harder I worked, the sooner I would get home. And it was I think 105 days from the day that I was first taken to the hospital back in November. And so it was a long haul. And they hung pictures of my kids right by my bedside at I was at 6 different hospitals before it was all said and done. And each new hospital room, they hung up the pictures of my kids right by my bed. And so it was the last thing I looked at before I went to bed, and the first thing I looked at when I woke up the next morning. And
so would you say that your kids were your motivation to keep going?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you didn't have children at the time, what would have been your motivation?
Running, maybe?
Yeah.
Because when you said our children your motivation, I was thinking to myself, that or running. So I say it was both of those things. And so I really wanted to run again. And
now, I heard that you were told by your doctors, which we didn't tell the listeners what you actually had amputated. So if you can share that, but then your doctors also said you can run again.
yes, they did.
Can you tell us what you ended up having to have amputated and what you did from there in regards to if you've ever ran again?
Sure. So, I wanted to run again really badly. And I think everybody around me wanted that for me.
Yeah.
And when we went for a consult with the foot doctor, I'd been told they were going to amputate, all my limbs. And we went to visit the foot doctor, that was going to amputate. And he was, looking at my right foot intently and said, I think we can save this one. And so then I was like, what? And then he was like, we might have to take off this part and this part. And I guess my husband and I both were like, but wait, no, like and we kind of had to pivot because we thought that they were going to take them both, and that was
Mm-hmm.
that. And the doctor was like, guys, this is good news.
Yeah, yeah.
But I was like, oh, yeah, okay, I guess you're right. So I got to keep most of my right foot. I don't have toes, and they took a big chunk out of my heel as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I did, in fact, get back to running.
Wow.
However, in the end, it was that right foot that kept me from running and still keeps me from running. Eventually, so basically on my heel, they took part of that heel bone such that it would be a very difficult place to heal.
Mm.
And of course, you're also walking on it as it's
Right.
trying to heal. And it bled. I kid you not. It was like 6.5 years, and it was still bleeding.
Oh my.
Not every day, not deep red heavy blood, but
Wow.
it would not heal. We went to wound clinic after wound clinic. We had a special wound nurse coming to our house every other day.
Wow.
And it really never healed. So because of that, it was and is still really painful.
Yeah.
So
Dang.
I will go out on walks if it's a beautiful day.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, I stick to the elliptical and getting in the pool and cycling. I got to the point where I thought, you know what? It hurts too much. It's not joyful anymore.
Yeah.
And I realized I didn't have anything else to prove, right?
Right.
So I stopped. Every time I kept running on it, it would bleed more.
Mm.
And so then, of course, you're opening yourself up to infection.
Right.
And infection is how I was in that boat to begin with. So, yeah.
So Kristan, how did your sense of identity shift if you went from full-time stay-at-home mom to runner, marathonist, all this stuff? How did that shift once you lost your hands and your leg?
I lost everything. I mean, I had. I mentioned that at the rehab hospital, I just couldn't wait to get home.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really when I got home that got hard.
Mm.
Because that's when I realized that, gosh, I haven't cried about this in a long time. I'm very mad at you, Julie. No, I'm teasing. I think it's
sorry.
That's okay. I think that's when I realized, at the time anyway, I thought that I would be a burden on my family forever.
Yeah.
That, they brought me in the house and they sat me down on the couch, and they're like, I watched everybody else taking care of my kids. And my baby wouldn't come near me because she was scared of me for good reason, obviously. But, it was hard. That was the hardest time. I came out of it, obviously,
How did you? How did you, Kristan? Because I think, when you're in such a dark place like that and you're used to being so independent and, you just get stuff done, how do you? Because there's so many people that are going to listen to this and be going through their own situations. And they don't know what that step is to get out of that dark place. How did faith and family, friends, like what was it for you that helped you make that first step out?
It was every single one of those things that you just mentioned. It was my kids. I mean, first of all, like someone was going to have to pick up after them. And,
Hmm.
that's the joke. But truly, they were the ones that first started to help me. You know,
Hmm.
I had, like my youngest was the one that, she close to the ground. So she was the one that picked up everything I dropped, which
Hmm.
still today is a lot of things.
Yeah.
One of her first words was oopsie.
Oh.
So I guess she heard that one a lot. But I mean, all of them in their own ways did help me
Hmm.
physically. But they also, I had to keep going for them because
Yeah.
that's who I wanted them to know me as
Hmm.
somebody that keeps going, as somebody that, you know, that is fierce and doesn't ever stop trying.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that's who I became.
Yeah. Did did you have you realized, as your kids have gotten older over the last 12 years, have you noticed that they've become more resilient or strong or independent because of you? I mean, because, it's one thing to say it, but you are a living proof of what it takes to be resilient, right? Have you seen that in your kids?
Yes, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to take credit for it. But kids are all resilient. All my kids are resilient
Mm-hmm.
for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but yes, I mean they've all had struggles. Certainly, one of their struggles is, okay, am I going to be embarrassed of my mom going to the pool? Like
Mm-hmm.
there are struggles that come with it.
Yeah.
But I hope that the positives outweigh that. You know,
Mm-hmm.
um, but yeah, they are all resilient. And
Yeah.
I like to think anyway that, well, it's not that I don't just think this. I know this. They are also very willing to help others.
Mm.
You know.
Yeah. I had shared with you that my own mother had her leg amputated after a car accident, and it was before I was born. So my siblings and we grew up. I remember my aunt telling me that at a year old, I was carrying my potty chair around because my mom didn't use prosthetics. She just had crutches, but she was 18, well, 17 when she lost her leg, and 18 when, anyways, the car accident happened at 17. But
Wow.
I remember, and I feel like even to this day, my sister and I talk about it, we are so fiercely independent because from a young age we had to be, and I am so grateful for that because my mom wasn't able to do certain things and she was able to do others. And I think, I used to get so frustrated with my kids because I remember as a kid, my mom would be vacuuming and I would just be like, oh, no, I'll do that for you, and then I'd say to my kids, of course, like, hey, can you vacuum? And they'd be like, ugh, and I'd just be like, I would never do that as a kid. Like it's, but our experiences are totally different. Their experience, but I just felt this like protection over my mom too. And I don't know if you've noticed this with your kids, but my mom used to get some looks and we'd go grocery stores or whatever. And I would just give the evil eye to these people who were like staring at my mom or like, I was just wanted to protect her. And, do you find that your kids are like that too if people are staring or anything like that?
Yes, 100%. Um,
Yeah.
my oldest, like one of my favorite stories about him was at the grocery store. Like he disappeared. Because at
Mm,
first, I took my kids to the grocery store. One would come with me every time because I needed the help, right? And still do if we're honest. But, you know, pushing a grocery cart was like a secret locker. Nobody had to know
Yeah.
that I was really leaning on it. But so my son had disappeared at the grocery store one day, and I'm calling for him. I'm like, "Where'd you go?" And he said, "Well, I just needed to give that lady a talking to." And I was like, "What?" And I was like, "That is not your place in the world, Ben. What did you say to her?" He said, "I said that staring is rude and that that's my mother. Thank you very much."
Oh my gosh. I feel like he and I could connect because I felt
Yeah,
the same way.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
for sure. But
Mm.
but yes, I think all of that is true.
Mm.
But yes, my kids are very independent, much
Hmm.
more so than their peers.
Yeah.
And I think, generationally, certainly your kids and my kids, they don't help like we
Hmm.
did, right?
Right.
And it's our own fault because we don't make them, right?
Hmm.
I think anyway. But my kids help me so much more than other
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
For a while I would, tell each kid that it was their job. They had to think of a dinner, come with me shopping to get
Mhm.
ingredients, and either make the dinner or help me make the dinner. Everybody
Yeah.
had to do one dinner a week. So,
That's
gosh,
great.
after that, that's 5 meals, right?
Yeah.
And I had one rule. It was like there just has to be a vegetable.
Smart.
Yeah. Well, and of course, my smart aleck kid, the same one who was very protective. The first time I made him do this, he got Tostino pizza rolls
Yeah.
and some baby carrots. And he literally stood at the table passing them out like it was chicken feed. Everybody gets a couple. I mean, but he followed the rules, so he
Yep.
did it. But I tell other moms that story. That all my kids cook once a week, and they're
Yeah.
like, "That's genius," and I'm like,
It is.
"You could do it too," and they're like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, no, I could never." I'm like, "All right."
Ugh. So you are a mental health therapist
Yeah.
and you have your own practice, which is incredible. Um, how has that helped you in maybe finding new identity after this or purpose? Has it because you're able to now help other people?
Yes. I was a mental health therapist since I guess I graduated in 2001. So my plan had always been, to go back after the kids got to be school age. Then I just
Hmm.
kept having kids so that they would never get to school age. I'm only half joking about that. But so that is what I did, and that was what I have always felt called to do.
Hmm.
Once this happened to me, for a while, I was like, "Who am I kidding myself? Who would want to come? Who would want to come to me as their therapist? I can't even help myself. How could I help them?" But with time, I grew to reframe that as a good mental health therapist would,
Yeah.
as that, people can look at me and see that I know what it's like to struggle.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so many therapists hide behind a degree and a desk and don't tell you anything about who they are, yet
Yeah.
expect you to tell them every deepest secret, which is
Right.
it's kind of a strange relationship when you really get down to it. A very healing relationship. I'm not saying anything bad about
Yeah.
mental health therapy. I think it's amazing. But maybe because of my disability, I do have to bring myself into the therapy room because, first of all, I always talk about it in the very first session because otherwise it's this big elephant in the room of, what happened to this lady? And I can tell when someone comes in whether they got to me through my website or through, Psychology Today, or, I can tell whether they know when they get there that I'm disabled or not. It's very telling. But especially with the people that don't know, I just quickly tell them what happened, tell them I kind of lay out the ground rules of when to help me and when not to help me and things like that. I tell this to most people. So I have a policy for myself. And that is when I'm trying to do something physical that is hard. And that could be anything from picking up my phone that I dropped to turning the key in the ignition on the car, whatever it is. I try it 5 times by myself.
Wow.
And after that, I can ask for help. And the reason that works so well is that, on try number 3, oftentimes I'm pretty frustrated, but I tell myself, okay, Kristan, you got this. You only have to try 2 more times and then you get help, And what's beautiful about it is that oftentimes I will get it on the 4th or 5th try.
Yeah.
And then who knows, next time I might get it on the 3rd try. And then 2nd, and then eventually I don't have to try anymore. I can just do it.
What an incredible mindset. And I know when we spoke briefly the other day, you had mentioned something, an intention for this podcast would be to let people know exactly what you're saying is to ask for help. Can you tell us a little bit about, because it sounds like that wasn't really your style before you got sick, and what you've learned and how you've grown because of your ability to now ask for help?
Yes. So it's funny you used the term fiercely independent, and that is the term that my husband has always called me. After 12 years of being disabled, he took the fiercely out because I no longer elbow people to get out of my way. But I was always very independent and stubbornly so. And even now, my husband will want to do things for me. It is hard for people to watch me struggle. Oftentimes, I think, and I even tell people this, it's harder for you to watch me struggle than it is for me to struggle. Because for me, it's just a Monday, right? This is just life.
Yeah.
And I can even see, like, when I'm at the grocery store and I'm getting my credit card out, and the cashier kind of looks at me, and I can tell they want to jump over that cash register and just get my credit card out and do it for me. I can see it. And oftentimes I'll say, oh, you know what, could you help? Even though I know good and well I can get it myself.
Yeah.
But it is almost everybody wants to do something to help. And that's another reframe that I have made, is that I've kind of tell myself that asking others to help me is in some ways giving them a gift.
Yeah.
I know what a gift and what a privilege it is for me to sit here in my office in this chair and be able to help others. And I know what a gift that is, because for a long time I couldn't help anybody. I couldn't help myself, right? And so since I do know that it's such a gift, I feel a little better anyway about asking for help. Truly though, my mindset on that has done a 180. I mean,
Mm.
before this happened to me, I was the one, I showed up at your door with a casserole.
Mm-hmm.
My kids were going to eat peanut butter and jelly that night, but I had made you a casserole. But,
Yeah.
that was who I was. I was the
Mm-hmm.
helper. I mean, I'm a professional helper. Look at what I
Yeah.
do, right? But I never was on the other side of it. And
Mm-hmm.
it's actually a really beautiful, powerful thing. And I don't know how or why, but especially in our country, we are told this narrative that if you ask for help, that means you're weak.
Mm.
And I think the opposite of that is true. It is in asking for help that we are all strong. And
I
that
love
is,
that. I love that you say that.
asking for
Yeah.
help is what brings us closer to one another. It is what builds
Mm-hmm.
community. It is what builds relationships.
Wow. So if you were to, somebody who's listening to this and feels that their life's been turned upside down and they need encouragement, what would you say to them?
Sure. So after I give them that little sermon about asking for help, that would be the first thing.
Mm-hmm. Ask
Second,
for help.
yes. Secondly, I would say that you just have to keep trying. You can't
Keep trying.
keep trying. You can't take no for an answer. And
Mm.
we all fail. And we all struggle. Everybody's got something. Everybody's got
Mm.
something. And it's the people that tell you that they don't have something, they're the ones that have the biggest problems.
Mm.
But everybody struggles, and not one person's struggle is bigger or smaller than the next person's. It's
Mm.
hard to them in that moment.
Right.
We can all look back at a make-believe journal that we would have written in 5 years ago and think, I thought that was hard.
Mm.
I mean,
Right.
if I went and
It's like until you do it. You don't know that you're capable until you do it, right? Sometimes.
yeah,
What would you say in ending this podcast? What would you say is what you're the most proud of in the last 12 years of the life that you've rebuilt? What would you say is you're most proud of yourself?
proud of myself. It was the two big things I wanted to live for most. It was my family and running.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, I still call myself an athlete, albeit a much slower one. However, that is not what I'm most proud of. What I am most proud of is A, my family, and B, my private practice for being a counselor.
Wow.
That was
Yeah.
always my life dream, that one day I would have my own practice.
Yeah.
And for a while, I thought that dream was never going to happen. But it has. And
Yes.
I just feel so lucky and so blessed that I have been able to do that.
Yeah. You took something so devastating and turned it into just an incredible amount of resilience and light to be able to shine onto other people. I know that you do some public speaking and advocacy work, and I've seen some stuff where you're, on paddle boards and I know that you went back to the Y briefly after recovering and you were doing a step aerobics class. Like, it seems like you just set your mind to something and you make it happen. And I am so grateful that you're on this podcast today because I know that your story is going to help somebody when they're in a tough time. And maybe even it's when they're working out and they don't want to, or they, are struggling with some mental health stuff and they say, I'm going to get help today. I know you're going to make a difference. So thank you so much for being here and sharing your story. I think you're absolutely incredible.
I hope it does make a difference, even if it's just for one person. That will be worth it. So thank you for having me and for this opportunity.
Here on From Dark to Light, we believe that resilience isn't about pretending the darkness never happened. It's about learning to rise from it and letting our scars tell a story of strength. If today's episode spoke to you, I hope you'll share it with someone who may need encouragement on their own path. Subscribe on YouTube or anywhere else that you get your podcasts. And as always, thank you for joining me in shining a light on the power of the human spirit. Until next time, I'm Julie Crawford, and this has been From Dark to Light.